Okay, so now we're going to be talking about a lesson covering factoring out the greatest common factor. Now keep in mind, this is the greatest common factor, not just any common factor. So we want the biggest number that we can divide all of these by. So for this first example, we have 6x squared minus 18x plus 9. So this is a quadratic trinomial, and we want to try to figure out what is the greatest common factor between 6, 18, and 9. Well, it would be 3. So notice we're going to write the greatest common factor outside of the parentheses, and then inside the parentheses you're going to write whatever you have left over. So this entire expression is called factored form. So if the instructions say write each polynomial in factored form, you're not just going to give the GCF. You give the GCF on the outside and then the leftovers on the inside. Now, there is one way that you can actually check your work to know if you factored it correctly. Once you factor it, you can distribute it back in, and if you get the original problem, you did it correctly. So if we factor in or distribute the 3 back in, 3 times 2 is 6x squared, 3 times 6 we get minus 18x, and then a plus 9. So because that matched the original expression, then I know that I have factored it correctly. So what you're going to do now, we're going to factor these down at the bottom of your paper. You need to write them in factored form, so that doesn't just mean tell me the GCF, but tell me the GCF and then what's left over. Now I'm going to be doing the odds, then I will be pausing the video and you're going to answer the questions and input your answers for the evens. So number 1, also make sure that you're finding the greatest common factor, not just any common factor. One other thing to mention, what I've highlighted here in pink, if the only thing you can divide the numbers by is 1, then you're going to write the answer as prime. You can't factor anything out because you can factor 1 out of everything, but we're looking for the greatest common factor. So if the only one that you can factor out is a 1, just write prime. Okay, number 1. So I'm looking at 13, 39, and 26. So I know I can divide all 3 of those by 13. 13 is the GCF, and then we're going to write the rest left over. So if I do 13 divided by 13, that's 1. So we just have a squared plus 3a minus 2. Now, some of you might wonder, how did she do that? Well, when you, let me rewrite this real quick. When you are factoring, you're really dividing. So we're dividing all of those by 13. So if it helps, you can just write all of these, like divide by 13, so that would cancel out and give me 1a squared. 39 divided by 13 is 3, and 26 divided by 13 is 2. Just watch your signs in between if it should be a plus or a minus. Now, if you can do this part that I wrote out in your head, you're welcome to do that, or you can write it out if that's helpful. Okay, so now I want you to think of the GCF for question number 2, and then put your answer in when the video pauses. Okay, let's try number 3. So the GCF, I can divide both of these by 5. Now, remember, the GCF goes on the outside, and then what you have left over. So 10 divided by 5 is 2m, and 5 divided by 5 is 1. Okay, your turn now. Now you're going to write the factored form of number 4. Okay, number 5, I can divide all 3 of these numbers by 9. So take out a 9 and we get negative 2x squared plus 6x minus 3. So this is the GCF and this is what's left over. And you can distribute that back in to check that your answer is correct. Okay, your turn for number 6. Number 7, I can divide both of these by 10. If you thought 2, yes, you can factor out a 2, you can factor out a 5, but 10 is the greatest common factor. So make sure you're picking the greatest. So we get 10 times the quantity 2b to the 3rd minus 3. Okay, your turn for number 8. Number 9, now this might be a little tricky. but remember you can use a calculator. So we're trying to figure out what 162 is divisible by. Now I'm going to try 18, so let me pull up my calculator here. And if I do 162 divided by 18, oh, there we go, it works, it's 9. So when you have really large numbers and then something like 18, go ahead and see if that 18 can fit into the larger number. A lot of students would have picked 9 for this answer, but we can actually factor out an 18. So 18, then we get 9x squared minus, and then I believe 54 divided by 18 is 3. Yep, just double checking. So we get 3x plus 1. Now you do have to write that plus 1, you can't leave it blank. That would look kind of silly. So number 9, you can factor out 18. That's the greatest common factor. Yes, 3 would have worked, 9 would have worked, but 18 is the greatest one. All right, you're trying number 10 on your own.